I want to see what happens when I push in some of these buttons because it's fun.
It's fun just to push buttons.
Yeah. Like,
Why
can
is
you
there
hear
black
this?
on the background? There's no background today. It's just black.
Can you hear that?
Not as clearly as you can, but a little bit.
It's peppy. And I like also that we're circles and we can be like bobbleheads in the circle. I'm like a fish tank. Welcome to Embracing the Wild. I'm Abby Pagoon.
And this is Audra Watley. Apparently, I'm fishy today. I
Oh
don't
my God,
know.
it actually totally reminds me that, so I actually had to work on one of Leo's friends the other day. That's like a old friend from back in the gym days. And it was really funny because apparently they have each other on each other's 360 tracking devices. Like, I guess the time, like some of the girls at some point all linked to their 360. Like we have the triple A's and like they have that on there, except Leo is marked in the 360 as Finding Leo. Like Finding
Finding
Nemo.
Nemo. Yeah, it's Finding Leo.
I know. I thought that was so super cute. And I was
Very
like, oh
cute.
my gosh, as soon as you said fishbowl, I was like, ah.
I don't know what's going on in my world.
Oi, what is going on in your world?
Yeah, I am in that stage of redefining, realigning, and I am bumping up against frustration. And
Okay. What is getting you frustrated?
my lack of ability to figure out tech crap. 'Cause I
I
get
can't
on
help you
things
with that
and
one.
I feel like they're supposed to work a certain way, and I cannot get them to work. And when there's like a little prompt that you put in text and you put in the text and you say, okay, save, and you go to the next page and it still doesn't show up, you're like, I know I've put it there. I've put it there like 8 times and I keep moving forward and it keeps deleting it. And I'm just like, I want to throw it across the room.
I hear that. I hear that.
and
I
and then there's a piece of me that goes, you know what? It's like I know I have to get past the initial hump of figuring some of this out for myself, but I will be really glad when I can let go of the not me part of what I'm doing, because it's so frustrating to be like, no, you know.
well, I like the fact that like it's the theme right now. Like they're everywhere you look, people is like redefining, rediscovering, like trying to reveal their more authentic trueness. I mean, it is like across the board the theme of the season. Like everybody's doing it. And like even the people that don't want to do it are still having to, because then the people around them are changing and then they have to adapt to the people that are changing and redefining themselves. So then and then it actually makes them dig a little bit deeper of, oh, what does this actually look like? Do I want to continue doing XYZ, or do I want to evolve? And it's like that constant ever it's just like constant expansion, constant growth, constant everything, like in all these different places. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that everybody's in a, whether they are aware of the shift or not, there's this really big shift about either aligning with a fifth dimensional way of being and existence or not, and remaining in the 3D. And if you're in the not phase, you're still trying to be like, how do I move forward in this world that is just beyond me and nobody makes sense anymore? Or being in the, okay, now I'm having to create new structures in a fifth dimensional space because they've never been created before. And
Right.
what does that even look like?
Well, and
And
I
when you're
love
stepping into that, it's like, how do you upgrade your language to where it's still understandable no matter which of the dimensions you're in?
right. Well, and I like that you just brought up languaging, because I think that's a really essential. I've been very hyper fixated on the frequency of phrasing, what phrasing brings,
Mhm.
and like how it makes that um easement in conversation, or honoring of the two parties that could be in conversation, so that it's not perpetuating judgment or expectation, or even falling back into victimhood, right? So, and it's kind of like one of those things where, even I, I said something to my daughter the other day about, like, your dad is very intuitive, but he keeps playing in the 3D world. Like, he keeps he keeps playing with 3D world concepts. Think like, and I said, and I'm not sure if that's because he's familiar, or because it's familiar and it's comfortable, or if that's because he doesn't know how to incorporate his new dimensional understanding. Like, with some of that healing. Does that make sense on how I said that?
It does, and here's how I'm going to expand on it. I don't think that most of us have a concept or understanding, because it's not taught anywhere, of what those dimensions are like.
Right.
What does it mean to be in a fifth dimensional space versus a third dimensional space? And
Right.
and so, it's like maybe putting languaging to some of that so that it's out there. It helps, because I would say that the majority of us, pretty much all humans, have had fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional experiences, but you didn't know them as that. Like,
Right.
they were just like, okay, yeah, that just happened. But at the same time, it's like it wasn't necessarily in a way that you could describe it, because our language hasn't evolved yet to really highlight those subtleties. And so for me, it's kind of like a fourth dimensional experience could totally be like recognizing that time is fluid, and that it's not necessarily the way that we see it on the clock and the calendar, right? It's
Mm.
like, we've always been told in school that time has very specific set standards, and that doesn't change. Well, that's not really true in the fourth dimension. It's kind of like, literally, if you've ever been in like a life threatening situation where it literally feels like seconds actually expand out into minutes,
It was frozen. It's like time froze.
into like super slow, to where you can actually hear your thoughts, and you're like, well, that's an odd thing that my body is doing. Why am I
Oh,
doing that right this second?
it
You know?
reminds me of, do you remember that scene from, oh my God, I love that, we have the gift of the Marvels and the DCs of the world, because there was some constructs there that the writers and creators fully understood about the quantum realm, physics, dimensions, etc., but like they brought it out in story. So then it wasn't like then it's like, okay, did they actually fully believe and understand, like, or was that just them downloading that from that concept, and really kind of putting it into a visual understanding for us physical beings? And I thought it was really like that one scene in X-Men. I don't remember what movie it is from. I believe it might be from First Class, if I were to have to put money on it. It is when they send Wolverine back in time. I believe they send him back to the 70s when Baldy, oh my God, I'm going to be like
Xavier.
shamed publicly. Um,
Xavier.
Yes, thank you. When Xavier is walking, because he hasn't fully incorporated, he's putting his energy into the selfishness of walking instead of the, like, where he was supposed to be. Like, he was, where he was in that. But then they went over to get Magneto, and then, like, who was possibly ends up being Magneto's son without them knowing. And he's like the speed guy. He's the speed guy that kind of resembles the Flash, but he, like, my favorite scene is when they break in to go get him, and he puts his headphones on, and like he's always putting his headphones on and listening to music, and then he kind of turns and he like evaluates everything that's going on, and then he'll run ahead, and then he'll put people in the positions that they need to be in before they like speed up. So like and that's the exact, like that is exactly what it feels like when you are at a life and death situation. It's like all of a sudden it's like pump the brakes, and you can feel the like pulse of the energy within the world that you're in. I mean, like you'd even be able to hear a freaking fly come in and be like, zzz, ooh, zzz, and like and go away.
Not even that fast. It would be like
Right, but then you would be like looking at it and you like stop, and then you're like, hey, and then it's like you had a conversation with the fly in the midst of like having this other massive like explosion going on on the other side. But it
well,
it
and
does feel
I
like
think that
that.
those, yeah, and I would say that, those gifts, are the superpowers of those particular guys that they're speeding up time.
Right.
Um, or experiencing it faster so that they can run ahead and then come back and whatever it is. But it's like they're manipulating fourth dimensional time. That's kind of the thing. I guess my best example is that, one day, and this has been years and years ago, I was driving down the highway in a rainstorm, and a car in front of me, like, 4 lanes of traffic, right? And there's somebody in all of the 4 lanes. This car hydroplane spins around and then slides across all 4 lanes in front of us to hit the
Whoa.
median. Nobody hit
Whoa.
anything. Obviously, we're all hitting brakes, right? But at the same time, it's like it seems like it was minutes,
Yeah.
and it couldn't have even been like 2 seconds. Like, I seriously doubt if it was even a full 2 seconds.
Right.
But it was so, I mean, it was so surreal that it's like I watched them spin. I watched them start to slide. I could even like hear each of my thoughts as it went. And I was like, why am I blowing the horn? It's not like they can do anything. And I'm looking the girl in the face, and I'm very aware that I'm like, I can see her face. She's facing me. We're going 80 miles an hour down a highway, except she's not, because she's backwards and sliding to the middle, and it's like all of this stuff is going on in slow
I
motion.
think, do you think that's where narration came from in movies? Like, do you think that's where like the Benjamin Buttons of the world and the Morgan Freemans are like, nobody does look at the people's shoes, or like you know what? I
It's
don't,
like, why
that's
are
not
they
even the
not
line, but you knew
ignoring?
where I was going. That's so funny.
But it was very surreal. But it was the perfect example of us not having awareness of our time, whatever. I mean, that stepping out of dimensional space is, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, fifth dimension, that time piece kind of falls away. And so you just exist. And sometimes you exist right in the moment and you're like very aware of the moment and all the stuff going on around you. But
Hmm.
sometimes it's like you're not even present to your physical.
Right.
And I would say that a lot of people probably experience more of that than they realize that they do. Um, but at the same time, it's like if you're living a 3D existence where you have the 9 to 5 job and you're always expected to be in and on task, and the, smart goals and all of the, physical tracking of physical stuff, then that's a very 3D concept. And so people that are, doing all of the tracking and doing all of the doing and not as aware of their being, um, it's like that 3D familiarity is somewhat comfortable, and it's what they know how to manage, manipulate, understand, and exist in.
What do
And then
you
there's
think
the ones
about?
that are like, I want out of it more. It's like I want more of the me time. I want more of the connecting with trees and nature and the dog and whatever it
Right.
is. It's like, they may have those moments, but at the same time, it's like those are so few far in between. It's like they can't imagine a life where they could actually make a living and function without the 3D physical stuff the way it is, because
And that's
that's
what I was
structure
going
is
to ask you, is what about people that are kind of stuck in this, I don't know if I want to call it like a limbo mentality or a limbo of understanding between that dynamic. Like it's, you have people that have had glimpses of it. It's starting to make a little bit more sense. If anything, they're magnetizing, everybody they end up coming in cross with is a mirror reflection of their abilities to the point, like, it's like the universe is just shaking shit up and being like, pay attention, like it's all here, like we're coming after you, like kind of mentality. But it's like when you have people that become almost very massively resistant to understanding, or they start thinking it's hogwash, or like sometimes it's what is some of the hokey, like we get the words hokey or hippity dippity or whatever. There's What do you think about people that are in that flux of, I don't necessarily know what to believe or think? Because I feel like that's some of their um I think that's some of their, like, not being able to surrender fully, encompass all of what they are yet, whether it's because of not having that upbringing, that lessonry beforehand. Like, even like I know I battled the I think I'm friggin' crazy concept. Like, like, oh God, don't say anything because people will think you're nuts, like type of aspect. That didn't last long, but like, because I already am. It's fine.
Because you find other people that are just as crazy, if not crazier.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah,
actually, I'm probably the weirdest one I think I've found so far. I haven't really, I haven't, I mean, like, you tolerate, you're like, oh, I'll skip with you. Wee! Like, so I'm like, yay. Like, so yay, at least that works. And then I don't feel as crazy. But I do feel sometimes like I am always the weirdest one in the room a lot.
I think you're probably just the most self-expressed.
Okay. Just
Yeah,
That
the
was
most
really
self-expressed.
that was
And
a
we'll leave it
really
at that.
kind way to
So,
say
so to
that.
go back, so to go back and answer your question, you know, I don't think that people are stuck. I think that whether it's subconsciously or consciously, they're teetering on where they want to live, right? It's almost like
Mm,
we're, we'll all still exist on the same planet, but there's becoming a separation between the 3D and the 5D. It almost reminds me of like Harry Potter, where you've got the Muggles, they all exist in the same world with the magic people, but at the same time, it's kind of like, the magic people don't necessarily bring their wars to the Muggles and vice versa, right?
yeah. And then you have
Right?
people that want to live there all the time, and the other people that are like, no, we coexist. And like,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And so, I mean, that's probably the best analogy I can come up with right this second. But it's not
Thank
like
God
our
for
it's
movies,
not like
man.
our planet's going and going to separate into two. It's kind of like they still exist in the same space, but the
It's like
awareness
it's
is
almost like
different.
frequency shifting. Like, okay, it's almost like, okay, we have this full world, but it's like, okay, we kind of like it over here. It's no different than picking a state to which you live in, or like an environment. Like, oh, I like living in the cold versus I like living in warmth, or I like
Right.
it when it rains, or like I only want it sunny.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a different perspective. Here's what's
Yeah.
interesting to me is we were talking about languaging. And so what's going to start to happen is that mm, because of the way that words have vibration, is that people that are attuned to those higher dimensional spaces, they'll start to hear vibrations on certain words that actually make those words a higher dimensional communication versus um, uh, it's like the words will have texture. I know
Hmm.
that sounds strange, but it's like as you hear them, they'll actually have texture versus just being communication, right? Because it's like we say words all the time, and half the time those words may or may not make sense, but whoever's listening actually gets them, right? It's like they go, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. That's fine."
Like it's no different than when somebody's listening to somebody and then they get goosebumps over the word that they said. It caused a physical like reaction within them because it hit that energy, or it opened up something within them. Kind of
Yeah,
like that.
it's very similar to that. I would say that probably my most vivid experience of that is that years ago I worked from home and I was doing a bucket load of meditation and breath work and all kinds of stuff like here in my house when I didn't have clients because I was pretty slow at the time. And I had a kid that I was working with on allergies and he was telling me the story about what he was doing for the day and whatever it was. And I was kind of like thinking in my head, well, what are we going to work on today? And then he started talking about his horse. And when the word horse came out of his mouth, it wasn't just horse. It was kind of like it had dimensions and layers and vibration around it.
Hmm.
I was just like, I mean, it literally had a different texture in the way that I heard it. And I have no
Mm,
other way to describe it than that. And so I was like, I guess we're working on horses today. And it was very interesting because it's like when we got into working on it with the system that I work with, there was actually an emotional component that came with it.
mm,
And it had to do with like disappointment, and I don't even remember all of the actual things, but his story, what had happened when we talked about it afterwards, was that they had his family, because they lived out on land, and they had done that so that they could have the chickens and the horses and all of the stuff. He's
mhm.
like, if I didn't have to clean the stalls for these 5 horses that I don't even like, I could have a car. Are you 16, right? 16, 17. He's like, I want a car. And instead, I'm having to muck stalls for these horses that I don't even like. And apparently, they give me allergies. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if that helps kind of distinguish that. Like, if you can visualize what it's like to, when I say like that words can have texture.
Well, I mean, and it sounds like, the kid was clearly having a lot of reservations, a lot of internal wrapped around the image of the horse. So then it was like, I mean, it sounded like it became, tarry and messy and gritty and like all the things of probably what he was mucking up.
Well,
He was mucking up those horses, and then the horse became that texture.
it's like, how you see when you see a picture of pollen, it's like the ball that has all the little spikes on the outside of it.
Hmm.
It was like that's almost how it felt, is that it came out with a little ball spikes.
Interesting. What
Yeah.
movie was that? Was that there's a movie that every time I see, I think when you say the word pollen, I go straight to that movie, and it's not the Lorax, but it's like the same type of film. I made it, maybe it's Horton Hears a Who, and he carries around dandelion everywhere, and he's talking to it. Like, and he's
Oh,
like,
that's funny.
oh my god, yeah. And then it just
It's like
reminds me of that.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids from way back.
Oh God,
They
I
had some pollen things on there.
I
I
forgot
don't
about
remember.
Honey I Shrunk the Kids, and I've seen that a lot at
It was
an
a long
unhealthy
time ago.
level. At a massively unhealthy level. But I mean, like, and actually, if you think about it, that dad in the story, he was driven, he was focused, he had a purpose. He was like in his own world of understanding, to the point where everyone around him, including, some of his children, didn't fully understand him, and like understood the complexity until, they shrunk, and then they're like, whoa, oh my god. Like, they're that I get it now, and that's the kind of thing that I notice, where, in this world of where we all go through so many different experiences, we all are like, I'm really starting to see the differences with, my kids' life experience, not only from their ages and the time to which they were born. Like we talked about, looking at the date to which you were born, like what was it, the headline in the news, right? Like I was freaking zebra or whatever, a zebra being born to a horse. Like, if you haven't listen to that podcast, go back, of course. Like,
Oh,
but
horses, of course, of
of
course, of course.
horses, of
Let's
course. But like when you like think about those types of things, like it really starts putting in perspective. Like, I have kids at various different ages, and they're not in their own generations, but they're pretty damn close to being in their own little generational gaps. And then, like their perceptions are different, learning lessons that were really hard concepts for my oldest to understand. My middle, like, she picks it up like it's nothing. Like, it's like it I repeat those things because I feel like they're important, and she already knows them, and it's like, oh, sorry, like, my bad. Okay. But then something else will come up for her, and then that is a new concept, a new focus, a new way of phrasing for me. Like I will have to be like, whoa, okay, hold on. How do we wrap that around to where I'm having a similar thing with Kai and his at his 8 years oldness. Like the different personality, and some of it's different personalities, like different things. But I'm very becoming heightenedly aware of the time to which each of them are like we're born into the experiences of those generations on top of the different version of parenting level that I am at. And I'm not saying like, oh, I have more answers than I did before that. It's that I become aware about different phrasing. Like even my daughter said to me the other day, like, you're different than how you were when I was little. And then I kind of looked at her, and I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Like I'm not going to dive into that because I'd like to at least salvage some of my ego and my self-esteem. So but I basically was like, yeah, I'm more enhanced. Like my abilities are more enhanced. My understanding is more enhanced. My delivery of parenting is more enhanced. And so, there is something that does come. I don't want to say it's like, oh, the wisdom years are in, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I mean, you point out to me, like when I became mom, when I, met Rudy, I was like a child. I was so young. And like, you don't think of yourself that way. And I even go back and that's one of the things I like to look at is, like what my husband was like when I met him and how different he is today, like so transformationally different. Just, I mean, worlds different. And then I see how we've grown together, and how, because of our influence and impact on one another, that's also shaped us into who we are today. But I mean, like, I've never realized how much massive growth that one person can amazingly achieve in such a short year time period. I mean, it was only 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, but still, that is a shit ton of change. And I mean, even you were pointing out, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, listen to your conversation just even from last year, like you're where that is. And I think that's the really cool thing about this work and what we do is just because of awareness, just because of acknowledging awareness of an emotion, of a shift, of something that shows up, and then giving the courage or the ability to say, I wonder why that is. Huh. And it
Well,
doesn't take much more than that to really start putting things into perspective. And then ironically, you end up having, certain podcasts or people that say something that makes that input, like our friend Lynn, who, hey, Lynn, like, she had sent us, hey, how's it going with human design? And then boom, was like, look what I just wrote. Like, it was like, okay, like, yay, like that was awesome. And it was like, it was a gorgeous, beautiful thing, to the point where I had to go share it with my daughter right away. I was like, look what she did. Like, just the vibration of honoring that bond and that friendship. And then, like, look what's created from that. There's so much beauty when you step out of ego and step into just being there for one another, and what can be created and learned, just period, from get out of your fucking head and just step into the being and the essence of what's going on.
yeah, I think really, and I've probably said this before, it's like right now our only limitations are our lack of creativity and ability to ask questions because we've lost our curiosity,
Mm,
right? And
right.
I, and it's like AI coming online so that literally it's like AI is the perfect example of group consciousness, right? Because it's like it's been programmed by humans and it's got all of the information from all over the world, where the World Wide Web was cool because you were connected and you could go see things, but you had to spend the
Process it
time looking
yourself.
for them. Where
Hmm.
now it's kind of like all you have to do is be able to figure out how to ask the question in a way that gets you what it is that you're really going for. And the more authentic you are in languaging and phrasing what it is that you want, the more that you get the feedback that you want, and the more that you're programming the AI to respond to you in your own voice.
Beautiful.
And
Isn't
so
it? It's amazing.
yeah, it's been enlightening in so many ways. uh, it's helped me like create my own voice, but at the same time, it's like really dive into awareness and having languaging for things that I've been saying and doing, or that I channeled when I wrote. And when I wrote them, I was kind of like, okay, well that makes sense. But at the same time, it's kind of like I didn't have anywhere that I could go to actually get confirmation.
Right. Well,
And
yeah, but that's also because of some of you. Some of it's you. Like, like, some, so, I'm like part of that. I'm just like, that's just because you're ahead of your time. Like,
yeah,
I
well,
actually
and I was
described you as an artist to somebody the other day. I don't like some. I was talking to somebody about how you are and how you create things, and I was like, she's kind of like the artist that doesn't become famous until she dies, like because she's so far ahead of her time. Except it's like, but we're not having that happen. Pew, pew, pew.
yeah.
That's gonna happen in this lifetime. But I'm just saying, like, people have to sometimes get to a certain level to be able to be ready to embody some of what you're teaching, or at least being able to make some of those great shifts. But the funny thing is that you profoundly influence people with just a tiny little bit, and it just shifts them so quickly. So
Well,
I mean, like, I
and it's
think some
like
of the reason why I'm so different is because we're friends.
yeah. I have that effect on people, and I guess I've never it's just been very recently that I became aware, how aware,
Mhm.
or like as aware of that as I have. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like most of our friends, they spend a good amount of time with me. It's like I can just watch them and they go do-doo, 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 and their life is like slowly transforming. And I don't think it's me. I mean, I may say stuff or make them think about stuff, but
Mm.
it's like it's completely on their own, you know? It's like
Well, yeah, but if you didn't speak into something that kind of lit that up
right.
within them, I don't think that that would have been. And like, I mean,
I'm a
I'm just,
right.
I'm
I'm
just
just a
learning to
catalyst.
do what you tell me.
Yeah. I'm just the catalyst. That's all.
I
Um,
know. Well, you say that all the time, but I think you're more than that. But I do have just learned to just listen to what you tell me to do, because I've discovered, like, oh, wait a second. She says I should look into this. I probably should just do it, even though I don't fully understand it yet. Like, and I found that, like, that was a little bit hard for me, because even with some of the human design stuff, and you're wanting me to like kind of embody some of that languaging, it did, like, I was ready to almost launch, like, I have launched my community, but like at the same time I haven't fully embodied the full vision of it yet. And it was like right when you said that to me, I was literally right on the let's go, and then all of a sudden everything froze, and it was like, no, we have to reassess this to make it the most functional and productive that it can be. And so I even, like, I mean, I almost put the brakes on, like, the developers, the VA that I took on, and it didn't put the brakes on it, but I just said, pause. I'm regrouping, I'm re-strategizing. I have to go through this learning process first. And so we set a deadline for me to go through that so that we can regroup next week. And so I'm like, okay, great. That would be, then I can really dive into it. But it was like, I bought the thing that you recommended. I'm starting to do that, and you're like, you don't have to worry about knowing this. Just go through this, like, prompt. I don't work well in that vibration because I'm such a visual person. It's hard for me to surrender into that. Like, and even my equine therapy this week, they were very much like, I think we need to dive more into the, like, your body's needing rest, and you're like, why are you so uncomfortable in the cocoon? Let's dive into that. And I was like, because the cocoon fucking sucks. That's why. Like, and they're like, yeah, but why are you so uncomfortable there? We need to really dive into that. And I'm like, you guys fucking suck. I'll see you next week. Like, like it's just, hi Sarah, hi Courtney. Like, like but I mean, they're so right. There is this uncomfortability that I have because I believe some of that stems from just even in this lifetime of needing to know or being able to be in control of what's in front of me, because that was my safety feature when I was a child. That was my survival thing. I had to have all the I had to have all the information, all the resources, all the setup so that I can put everything in action right way when it needs to. Fucking control freak right there, if you don't say, right? Like that's like hyper obsessive control of just, and I understand why, because it was I needed to feel safe, I needed to know those things. But then as you've guided, hey, I need you to dive into this, and I'm like, okay, fine. And you're like somatic exercise healing, here, let's do this. Now it's like I actually kind of was internally frustrated because I thought some of the work that I was supposed to create, I was stepping out of movement. And I thought, like, oh, okay, because I kept having that vibration. I was connecting movement to the same vibration as they do in the 80s and 90s, which is a meathead mentality and stupid shit, like stupid, oh, much can you lift bullshit. And it was driving me crazy. And then when you're like, oh, somatic exercise, but I'm coaching into more of this stuff and awareness. And then I didn't even like put together how much of the physical body is processing that. And you stupidly was like, just whatever. And that was like, what, a year and a half ago or something, you had said that to me. And then then when I finally started diving into it, I clearly was like, I could see, if I watched videos or I would look up certain people that are out there so that you can learn about it. And then I was like, oh, actually they connected this in like that. They should have done this, this, and this first. And actually, no, this could have been connected and looped over here. And actually that one doesn't really do that. We need to put it in it. Like I could see it as if it no different than when I see a body walking, and when it moves, I know what's wrong with them. And
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what's going on. No different than reading someone's vibration on where they are emotionally and then having to guide through them. It was almost like my energetic ability, my natural healer was like, oh, that was really cute that she tried that, but that doesn't work. That's not, no, no, like, and it but it was like, but then I also kind of was like, okay, how, oh, okay, this is because of where I've come from, this is because of what I've been molding myself into, to why I can now step into that. And then now it makes me really excited about future stuff to incorporate. Oh my gosh, I already have the gym set up, I already have lighting, go into recording, create a program on anxiety and how to release anxiety physically, meditation, and all the different things. And boom, here's a quick grab bag for your 20 somethings that are so anxiety reading that they can't function in society. Like, why are we not doing more of that? Like, what are the now things to fix? So, and I think you're doing the same thing, just in a total, like in your genius manner.
Why, thank you.
Get an
Yesterday,
ego boost today. Is today's episode an ego boost?
I was gonna say yesterday I definitely did not feel like a genius. I'm like, I feel dumb because I can't figure this out and I can't figure out how to make meta work, and meta is stupid.
That's funny. My day yesterday was all self-care appointments and then like literally laying down and doing nothing.
Yeah.
And
I was
apparently I have issues with being in the cocoon. So I'm trying to process what the fuck that means.
so here's the thing, like I think people have heard the butterfly story and been like, yeah, you go into the cocoon and then you come out a butterfly. Here's what's fascinating. Like, if you like really read the science between what happens, and yes, I'm going to go there. It's like the caterpillar spends its whole life going consuming, right? It's like consuming information or consuming food. It's consuming until it just gets to where it can't consume anymore. And it's like, whatever, I give up. And it goes into a cocoon. And inside of that cocoon, it literally digests itself down to nothing but what they call imaginal cells. And these imaginal cells are the ones that keep the record or the construct of what the butterfly is. And so from those imaginal cells, it starts to recreate itself.
Hmm.
And it takes time to recreate itself. And then when it
Don't
gets to
like
where
that process.
I know. And then when it gets to where it's like, now that I have used my imaginal selves to recreate myself, now I have to push myself out into the world. And that is not a comfortable process. It is
I am
literally,
really
it's a
tired.
rebirth. It's a rebirth.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're that tired, then, be in the cocoon. Stuff happens in the cocoon. Lots of stuff happens in the cocoon.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what I forget is that just because I'm not busting out of I think I've been so excited and like the vibes and the feeling and I can't wait to bust out of it. But then I also am like, not ready yet, almost there though. And I kind of I get into that back and forth type of thing. And then some of it is like, the own, like I'm a human and self-sabotaging behaviors of, you know, like, hey, fear of, and that actually was my focus in my session with Maze yesterday, our good friend Maze. Like, our session was my entanglement of fear of success and fear of failure, and how that's all intertwined. And I just love the way that she said, people that really experience those emotions and that massive entanglement is because they are doing really great big things that can change and shape the world into something different. And so, and that is kind of that internal struggle that's created. And you have to get pushed through that and bust through those barriers to be able to do that massively big thing. So I thought that was just very cool. I was
Yeah.
like, how about for embracing that experience?
Embrace that wild.